We'll try another slide. Alright, so in your medullary rays, you're going to find those between the, lying in between the cortical ligaments. So, alright, so in these sections where you have the tubules kind of running together, those are your medullary rays. Alright, so that's where we're going to find our thick ascending and descending limbs and our collecting tubules. Alright, so your thick descending limbs are going to look similar to your proximal tubules. But these are long, straight tubules. So notice you have these long, straight tubules, and the morphology is similar to your proximal convoluted tubule. So you have these larger cells, all this stuff within the lumen. The lumen isn't as wide and it's not as clear, and the nuclei are a little bit further apart. So that would be your thick descending limb. Alright, with your thick ascending limb, those are going to look similar to your distal convoluted tubule. Alright, so again, these are long tubules. I think this is a piece of long here. Alright, so notice you have a wider lumen. That's not such a good example. This is a good one. Alright. So you have clearer lumen, you have these long tubules, and it looks similar to your distal convoluted tubule. Alright, so this would be your thick ascending limb of the loop of tendon. Alright, smaller cells, notice they look different from our proximal tubules. Alright, so your thick descending limbs, those are going to look similar to your proximal convoluted tubule. It's just that they're much longer tubules. And your thick ascending limb is going to look similar to your distal convoluted tubule. Alright, with the collecting duct, what you're looking for is the tubules are going to look similar to your, so they're going to be long tubules as well. They look a little bit similar to your thick ascending tubules, but you're going to see very distinct borders between the cells. Alright, so notice that with these cells, with the proximal and distal convoluted tubules, you're not really able to see the lateral borders between the cells. So it's kind of hard to tell where one cell stops and where the next one begins. If you're seeing very distinct borders, so notice like here you can kind of see the line, if you focus up and down, you can see that lateral border between these cells here. So that would be a collecting duct. Alright, so if you're seeing distinct borders, that's your collecting duct. If you're not, then it's probably proximal or distal tubule. Alright, so that's all within our cortex. So then if we move to our medulla here, so let's go back to look over for it. Alright, so notice here you can kind of see the transition from the cortex into the medulla. It's at that boundary that you're going to find your arcuate artery and vein. Alright, so remember I said they're usually running together. Alright, so if we see, remember our artery, we have our endothelium surrounded by smooth muscle, this large wall of smooth muscle. So that would be your arcuate artery, and then lying right beside it would be the vein. Alright, so that's always at the boundary of your cortex and medulla. Here's another one, that's your arcuate artery and arcuate vein. Alright, so as we go into the medulla, we have these, that's where you're going to find mostly your thin loop of Henle. So that's going to have your simple squamous epithelium. Alright, so if you're seeing kind of a space and it doesn't have any blood cells inside it, and you see the nuclei bulging into the lumen, then it's probably a thin loop of Henle. Alright? Your collecting ducts are gonna combine to form larger ducts, and as you move towards your renal papilla, it's gonna switch from a simple cuboidal epithelium to a simple columnar epithelium. So notice you're seeing the lateral borders very distinctly. Alright, so these are your collecting ducts. Those are gonna combine. Those are gonna come together to form larger ducts as we move towards the renal papilla. And you'll notice that the cells are getting a little bit longer as you move towards the papilla until they start to look more like simple columnar. Alright, so you start to have these larger and larger ducts forming. Alright, so again you have these very distinct lateral borders between the cells, and the cells start to look more like simple columnar. So those would be your capillary ducts. Alright, I think this is probably a thing. Alright, so notice you have these larger and larger ducts. You can see here where these two are coming together to form this larger duct here. We have our simple columnar going all the way down into the renal papilla. Alright, so on one side you have your simple columnar epithelium, and that's going to drain into your renal pelvis. And then on the other side of the pelvis, you have a switch from to your transitional epithelium. Alright, so that's going to lead into your ureter. Alright, so notice you see the difference. You see your stratified epithelium, and you have these large balloon-shaped cells at the top. That's characteristic of your transitional epithelium. I have another slide of the kidney here. This one showed the thin loops of kidney. Alright, so again, moving from our cortex, as we go down into the medulla, you see Alright, so on this one I found a couple of thin loops of Henle that were pretty distinct. Okay. Alright, so here's a good one. So notice this one, we know this is a blood vessel because we see all these red blood cells. Here we see this space, we can see the nuclei of the simple squamous epithelium and the nuclei kind of bulging into the lumen. Alright, so this would be a thin loop of Henle with the simple squamous epithelium. Alright, so that's one example. Here's another one. Again, you can see the nuclei bulging into the lumen of the tubule. Alright, so those would be your thin loops of Henle. So this one, the staining isn't that great, so I'm not look at it. Not really going to look at anything else on this slide. But again, you can see a thin loop of Henle here. Alright, so once you see that simple squamous epithelium, there's a couple of them here, so probably cuts across a few of them here. Alright, so those are found in your medulla. Alright, so once the fluid drains from the kidney, it goes into your ureter. Alright, so this is a scanning view of the ureter. So a ureter is going to be a single